Lando Norris started on pole position for the 2025 Belgian Grand Prix, but after the race, he finished second. So the question is, what went wrong? And the answer is too many mistakes, too many things that he could have done, and too many opportunities, small opportunities that he left on the table. And if you add them all up, you can see where Lando lost the race, and we will go through all of those mistakes step by step. The first one is at the rolling start. So let me pull up the track. This is the track. When you know that the DRS is strong, not the DRS in particular, but like the slipstream is strong going into turn 5, and this is the only place where you are going to be overtaken, if at all, then you have to play some mind games. If Oscar Piastri is right behind you, which he was in the safety car restart, it's a rolling start, what you need to do is you need to just momentarily lose the position out of turn 1, get a good exit, stay close to Oscar, and then do the exact move that he has done. This reminds me of what Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen did in 2022 Bahrain Grand Prix. It's not exactly the same thing, but you can understand the mindset. So here, I'm gonna mute this. Max Verstappen is behind Charles Leclerc ahead, and Max has DRS and he is deploying battery energy. Charles, as you can see, is also deploying it, but you see Max has overtaken Charles, and Charles allowed it. He defended the inside. He went a little bit on the inside, didn't cover it up as aggressively as he could have. Verstappen goes through, and then Charles Leclerc again retook the position in the next DRS zone, which happened after a couple of corners. So Norris's first opportunity, because you know this from the sprint race, that starting first is disadvantageous, especially on the first lap after the green flag conditions, because in the first lap of racing, the car behind is going to be the closest. Whether it is a standing start, whether it's a rolling start, the car behind is going to be very, very close, a couple of meters in these type of conditions, like the first lap of green flag conditions. So you know that you are going to be susceptible. You know that the closest Oscar will ever get to you is on the first lap of racing, whenever that happens. So you have to deliberately relinquish the position and have a good exit out of turn 1 and just do the exact same move going into turn 5. And we all saw how powerful the slipstream was. Like, it was not even a competition. Like, there was nothing Lando could have done, late braking, shove him around the outside, nothing like that. The slipstream was just extremely powerful, and massive credit to Oscar Piastri for not lifting as much as he should have in Urus and Radillon. But this is an opportunity that I think Lando could have had. The second thing that Lando could have done is not think for himself, right? So one of the things, this is the pit stop summary. We'll talk about that in a second. One of the problems that Lando has is that he doesn't think for himself. He offloads the thinking. We saw this in the 2024 British Grand Prix where Lewis Hamilton won that race. And during the dynamic condition, when drivers were, like, the crossover period was coming and the drivers were switching from the intermediate tires to the dry tires, Lando was doing what Lewis was doing. He was basically asking his race engineer that which tires Lewis has gone on. The softs, okay, give me the same thing, I want to cover him. And he was just focused on that. He was not focused on how the tires would behave, how he feels the track, and what kind of tires would be best for him to go ahead and win the race. Now, in the end, copying Lewis Hamilton's strategy costed potentially a second position in the 2024 British Grand Prix for Lando Norris, because Max Verstappen on the hard tires overtook him. And this is a recurring mistake with Norris, because he did the same thing in the 2025 Belgian Grand Prix during the pit strategy. So when you know that overtaking is impossible, when you know that you're right behind Oscar Piastri, but 1 second of a gap is gonna be too much, and DRS alone is not enough, you need to be close. And you will never get that close unless it's the start of the lap 1 of the racing conditions, as I mentioned. So he should have taken it upon himself to pit. Don't wait for other people to pit. Don't wait for your teammate to pit or the team to call you or whatever it is. You were in the car, feel the track, and call the shots. Lewis Hamilton pitted on lap 11, and I think Lando could have pitted on that lap as well. Slightly ahead of Oscar Piastri, because Piastri pitted on lap 12, and I know that he's the race leader, so he kind of does call the shot. But Oscar Piastri also took a conservative approach. Piastri waited until Lewis Hamilton pits, and then this guy went in, which also goes ahead and shows that McLaren, like as a whole, have a proactive approach, not a proactive approach, a reactive approach instead of a proactive approach. And Lando could have taken advantage of this as well. When you know that your team is a bit conservative and consists of a bunch of pussies, you can go ahead and take the risk because you are going to finish second regardless. Because you are 1 second, like at the time when like the inters were kind of falling off and the crossover period was coming, like was approaching, you know that you're basically going to finish second. If things remain like that, you will never have that much of a pace advantage anyway. Might as well go ahead, roll the dice and pit 1 lap sooner. What's the worst that could happen? You will tiptoe around the circuit a little bit. Okay, P2, net, I mean, it's the same result. So that's the second mistake he has done. He didn't think for himself. And a lot of people are saying that, the pit stop for Lando was slow. It was not that slow. It was just half a second, which is definitely not ideal because if you look at it, Piastri was 23.8 and Lando here is 24.3. So it's not that big of a difference. I know that the difference counts. Every millisecond counts and whatever. But it's not that big of a difference. So another thing is, Lando could have suggested the double stacking. He could have just pulled back a little bit, and he was, I think, 1.5 seconds behind Oscar Piastri when these guys were diving into the pits. 1.5 seconds, he could have pulled back, made it 4 or 5 seconds, and then went to the pits. Because by doing 1 extra lap, he lost 7 to 8 seconds. And when Lando got out of the pits, he was 8 or 9 seconds behind him. Double stacking, in retrospect, could have been better because you at least would have been 4 to 5 seconds behind Oscar Piastri on hard tires that you could have pushed. So that's the second mistake that Lando Norris has done. Let's look at the third mistake. So this is the racinginsights.com, great website, big shout out to them. And this is the lap times, comparative lap times. So the green one is Lando Norris and the orange one is Oscar Piastri. And you can see the difference in pace between these two guys in the initial part of it. There is a phase where Piastri is faster than Norris. Norris could have done 146.3s consistently, which is 4/10 faster than Oscar Piastri. He could have consistently maintained this pace. And this consistency is a problem with Lando Norris. Obviously, we'll talk about these mistakes. But the first mistake here is that he didn't warm up the tires quickly. I mean, he did, but then he just didn't push them enough. I don't know why he was being so conservative. It's not like you needed to save those tires anyway. But if Oscar Piastri is pushing, and I know that the medium has more pace, but you can warm the hard tires up and you can push it more. So you have to do very little tire management there. The hards were very hard, 2 steps hard. So he didn't do that. And if he pushed more consistently and maintained around 145.8 and something like that from this phase onward, then it would have encouraged or pushed Oscar Piastri to push his medium tires a lot. And eventually, you are much more likely to enter the drop-off phase of the medium tires. Because if Lando just continued to put on the pressure, because on the first 17 laps, I think we had dry racing for about 33 to 34 laps. For the first 17 laps, Lando Norris only made 1 second. Because on lap 17, the gap was 9 seconds between Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. On lap 34, the difference between Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris is 8 seconds. So he only made 1 second all the way up to here, obviously he made this mistake on lap 34, but he only made a second, which is disgusting. You need to at least make 3 to 4 seconds during the period of 17 laps, is what I'm trying to say. Like if the gap is 9 seconds at the beginning and you need to go ahead and overtake your teammate, you cannot be so slow in making the progress. So for the first 17 laps, he only made up 1 second, which is horrible. And then later on, he decides to push, and Oscar Piastri actually maintained his pace. If you look at the pace of Oscar Piastri, it's very consistent. But with Lando, you see these massive fluctuations, and that's another problem that we have with Lando Norris. He cannot maintain the tire in that window, probably because it's dynamic conditions and probably because it's a driver's track per se, because Spa is kind of like a free-flowing circuit. It allows the driver to, play around and experiment with different racing lines and find their lines into and out of corners. In those type of tracks, Lando Norris struggles a little bit, but in very technical tracks, his tire management is actually impeccable. So in this track, he struggled to maintain the consistent pace. He didn't push the hard tires early enough. For the first 17 laps of the stint, he only made up 1 second out of the 9 seconds. So from lap 34 to lap 44, he had to make up 8 seconds and make the overtake, which was obviously impossible. When I saw the relative stints, when I saw the gap after lap 34, it was very obvious that Piastri was going to win. So that was the third mistake that Lando Norris did. The fourth mistake are like a combination of these ones. These cost him about 4 seconds, because here he loses 1.2, here he loses about 7 tenths, and here he loses about 2 seconds. So that's cost him another 4 seconds. So basically, little mistakes everywhere. He could have played the mind games here, relinquished the position, maintained close distance with Oscar Piastri, and then got him back before turn 5 and maintained that. Okay, that didn't happen, whatever. In pitting, he could have used his own brain and own experience, because he is on the track, and called the shots himself. He didn't do that. He could have pushed the team to double stack. He didn't do that. And he just didn't start pushing his hard tires long enough. And I know a lot of people who say it's difficult to have like warm up and all that type of stuff. Bro, in 17 laps, if you're making up 1 second, it shouldn't be that hard, is all I'm trying to say. Now, I know that I'm not a race car driver or anything like that, but Norris is clearly able to be faster than Oscar Piastri by 4 tenths, 5 tenths, something like that from this stage. And the problem that he had was being consistent. And at this stage, Oscar Piastri was marginally faster than Lando, maintained the gap. Like, that's basically Oscar's race. He maintained the pace to Lando, and Lando just didn't push hard enough or early enough or wasn't consistent enough and made a bunch of mistakes. So that's why Lando Norris couldn't win the Belgian Grand Prix. And Oscar Piastri went ahead and got the victory. I think the move on lap 1 was very substantially important. But after that, Oscar Piastri also drove a perfect race. Like, if you see the fluctuations, there's a lot of fluctuations in Norris's times. There's very little in Oscar Piastri's times. Whatever fluctuation you're seeing with Oscar Piastri is because he is managing the lap times. He's pushing for a few laps, then taking it easy, pushing, taking it easy. Like, Oscar Piastri is significantly consistent around Spa compared to Lando Norris. That's what got him the victory. Lando is a little bit conservative approach, took a little bit of extra time to get started on the hard tires, and didn't call the shots by himself because he's not confident in his ability to read the track and make his own decision. Proactive approach is necessary to go ahead and win championships. You need to force the hand of the team. You need to go ahead and call the shots and say that this is how I want the pit stop. I want it now. I want to double stack. You have to go ahead and say this. And you have to be consistent. You gotta go and fix this fucking problem, whatever this is. Otherwise, Oscar Piastri will easily run away with the victory. And the worst part about all of this is for us, the fans, because this title fight is boring as fuck. I have never been less interested in two teammates fighting for the Formula One World Championship ever before in my life. Even before I was born, there was amazing fights between teammates. I would rather go ahead and rewatch those races than talk about these two. That's how shit these two guys are. That's how conservative and boring these two guys are. Hopefully, in Hungaroring, a track that I think will suit Lando Norris. It's more technical track. We will see what happens. I think he's going to get pole position, but the overtaking opportunities are also there, but not that much. So we will see what Lando can do. Thank you for watching, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.